Welcome to the Casey Ingram Show, where we break down the headlines, ask the tough questions, and bring you real conversations that matter right here on the Treasure Coast and beyond. I'm Casey Ingram. Let's get into it. John Dial is a Stewart-based professional, community advocate, and emerging figure in Martin County civic and political circles. A resident of Stewart, Dial has built his reputation through deep ties to the local business environment, particularly within the marine and waterfront economy that defines much of the region's identity. With a background rooted in practical industry experience, understands the economic drivers that impact working families, small businesses, and coastal infrastructure. His perspective is shaped by hands-on involvement rather than career politics, which has positioned him as a relatable and pragmatic voice among residents seeking responsive local leadership. Dial has shown a growing interest in public service, focusing on issues central to Martin County's future: responsible growth management, protection of waterways, support for marine and small business industries, and maintaining the quality of life that attracts residents to the Treasure Coast. His approach emphasizes fiscal awareness, local accountability, and direct engagement with community stakeholders, including neighborhood associations and business owners. As he continues to expand his presence in the public sphere, John Dial is viewed by supporters as a candidate who bridges the gap between private sector experience and public sector responsibility, with a focus on practical solutions over partisan rhetoric. So welcome to the show, John Dial. I'm very glad to have you on here today. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy weekend.
Well, thank you for having me. As you know, this is my first podcast, my first election, but not my first rodeo for running business deals like as Martin County is. The county is a business because of the massive amounts of money that are spent on projects. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Truly, truly. And you are running for District 4 Commission, and you're challenging a six-term incumbent. What is she missing that you think you clearly see?
I think that, she's been there a long time and, she certainly has good conservative values like I have as well. And I really don't have a lot of negative to say about her other than the fact that I don't think she really got it done in all the time she's been there. So what makes us different is I'm used to getting it done and not getting paid unless I do get it done. I'm used to signing the front of the check and somebody else signing the back. In this situation, I'll be signing the back of the check and the Martin County voters will be signing the front of the check.
So why now? What has changed in Martin County that made you to step up this year?
The rampant growth that we've seen has just been unchecked and unabated for the last 10 years, and how there wasn't proper planning for any of this up front, and not proper financing on the front end of these projects instead of trying to play catch up on the back. Just a frustration in general, being on the other side of the county commission, voicing my opinion and realizing that after I walked out of that room, I don't think it made much difference, even though I had really valid points. Just a general frustration I think the general population of voters feel in Martin County now.
And John, I have seen you in those commission quarters. You have spoken at public comment about things, and I understand your frustration. Oftentimes that does seem to be the case. A lot of folks can come up there and say something to the commission, and it feels like it's already decided before that day anyway.
Yeah, one of those days I was up there, I remember I looked at a certain commissioner in the eye and said, "Don't make me move into your area and run against you." And I don't think he thought it was funny, but I thought it was real funny. Oh, here I am running against another one, right?
Here you are. That's right. You're already in that district. If voters had to choose in 10 seconds, what's your one difference from Commissioner Sarah Hurd?
Getting the job done, period. End of story. Anybody that knows me knows that I get it done, and I'm honest to a fault. All you have to do in Florida to be successful is do what you say you do, when you say you do it, and for how much you do it for. And I'm not partisan in how I think. I'm pragmatic in how I think. So that's probably more than 10 seconds. Sorry, I overran my time.
That's quite all right. So residents feel like they're paying more every year. What would you actually do differently on property taxes?
On the tax base, it's not so much what you pay, but what's spent and where it goes. And if there are surpluses, that should be credited back to taxpayers in some shape, form, or fashion, instead of going to a slush fund for discretionary purchases for different things. I mean, I think it's all got to be accounted for. And I think that right now, you asked me the difference. I think some of the current commissioners, and again, I don't want to call anybody by name or anything like that, have lost touch with their constituents. And when you've been in a place 24 years, you don't get out and do what you could or should be doing if you're a fresh horse, and that's reality.
True. Martin County's population has grown approximately 10% over the last decade. Tax bills again have exploded 45 to 60%. What's driving that in your view?
Well, I think that, we'll talk about that for a second. It's a significant growth that Martin County last year, they had a significant growth reaching $39.2 billion, right? It was a 12.7% increase, largely driven by these new, developments that have gone in, right? And while the county commissioners tentatively lowered the millage rate to 9.9, to offset the rise in values of properties, for many residents, it still increased due to the overall rise in the property. So, it's a slippery slope. And, again, I'm not well versed in all this because I haven't had 20 years to sit in there, but give me 6 months in there and I'll know this backwards and forwards.
And John, that's truly a frustration because with every major development that's come through, take Atlantic Fields, for example, we were told it's bringing in such a large tax base. So as residents, we're like, oh, good, we're going to get a break on our taxes. They're not going to raise them this year. But that just isn't the case. Everything just still keeps going up and more money keeps coming in. That's why this budget has exploded 45 to 60% over the last decade.
But that's because they spend and tax
Right.
instead of tax and spend, right?
Right.
The government's not really good at working a budget. We all are. I mean, listen, if I make $10, I put 3 to taxes, I put 2 to savings, I put 2 to what I live, I put 1 to my hobby of shooting iguanas, and then the other 2 I spend on whatever, right? But the bottom line is simple math. And I think that's where, the government, they just think that the taxpayers are a never ending source of money. And during COVID, we saw a cutback, which was nice. People weren't asking for those increases. And because in private business, it just works on what your profit level is. So I think
Right.
that economic transparency should be passed on where taxpayers may get a break. Why not?
And we know it's possible. You brought up during COVID, and let's go back a little bit further than that. The economic crisis, the meltdown of 2008, municipalities learned how to tighten their belts. But boy, when that turned around, they've just been spending away.
Reminds me of my wife at a charity function with a paddle in her hand. It's a dangerous thing.
All right. What's one project or approval you would have voted differently on than the commission?
I would have probably voted, and again, I'm not an authority on what they've done or what they haven't done, but I probably would not have voted to spend $80 million for the train station downtown Stewart. I believe that, that's a private entity, and, they signed a deal that said they'd pay half of it, then they wanted to change it. The other thing I probably wouldn't have voted, or chose not to do, I probably would have joined the other counties on the SB 180 fight in Tallahassee to keep our comp growth plan to be ours and not Tallahassee. I mean, I don't think it's very good for somebody that doesn't live here to make decisions on us. And, I don't care who's going to move here tomorrow. I care about who lives here today.
John, and just so folks that are listening to this understand that, that was a $10,000 investment in a lawsuit with other municipalities around the state. And there was a lot of talk about that. The commissioner said, oh, we're going to have a glitch bill in 2026. Let's count on the glitch bill. Our representatives will take care of it. And, personally, I thought, at least make a stand that we're going to fight back. We're not going to keep having this. We had SB 102, the Live Local Act, then we had SB 180. It just keeps happening. At least say we're going to have some kind of recourse if you keep doing this. However, the commission voted no. And guess what? There's no glitch bill.
Well, and I can tell you this. I've been saving my Social Security checks. I'm using it all for this campaign, but I would have given them that $10,000 out of my Social Security, savings if they would have jumped in the hoop on there. And you know what? I think there's like 167,000, residents here in Martin County.
Right.
And if you take off our tax bill, what $10,000 would have been, and you would have told them, oh, we can, I don't know, I don't want to call specific things because, it's just not my style. And I wasn't in that seat when those decisions were made. But I can tell you there's been decisions made that were hundreds of thousands of dollars that 10 grand would have made a difference to try to save our local Martin County way of life.
Well, 15 million locally on the train station, 80 million for all overall. But, but 10,000 to protect our home rule. It's one of those things. So
And,
appreciate you
and, and
bringing
let's
that up.
talk about the train for a second. They've lost over $2 billion. I don't know how they're going to make that out, but let's keep going. That's a hot topic. What do you call a hot button topic? I'm gonna stay away from that one right now.
Okay. So do you think Martin County leadership has been proactive or reactive when it comes to growth?
100% reactive. If it had been proactive, we would have already had infrastructure in place. They would have, pulled the throttles back on the boat a little bit because they should have seen the rough seas ahead. It was building. And you know what? Nobody ever, ever, ever gets mad when you pull the throttles back, make it not so bumpy on the road, change direction as long as you get in the at the same port you want to go in. I hate to use nautical references, but being a boat captain in my past life for 20 years, 27 years, and a pilot, I realize that nothing ever goes, the way you plan. It's always got the unintended consequences, and you have to plan for those. And from what I see, they didn't.
So I have to go back to Brightline just one more time because
Thanks.
I already know what you think about the 15 million and the 80 million. But what are your thoughts on the county forcing the station to be located in downtown Stewart? When Stewart voted no, Stewart just released memo to the county and the DOT that there's not even enough parking spaces if they build the station there.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, it's interesting you said that. Last night I was downtown Stewart. My wife and I went down to dinner. This was at 8:30. I had to drive around 30 minutes before I found a parking spot anywhere even near to park at 8:30 at night. I'd been down there earlier, and and listen, I was talking to people, business owners down there. They all are under the impression that Brightline's going to have a lot of people coming to Stewart to go downtown to shop. And you know what? I feel for them. And I think that I've got some friends in downtown. They're staying in an Airbnb in Rocky Point. They didn't even know I live in that area, and they're staying there, but they're going downtown anyway. So I think if the train station were located someplace where you didn't have to just create a massive amount of problems to put the station and the parking, and where it's already short on parking, Ubers make money, transit makes money, and that brings me another thing on the transit. I don't understand why we don't have shelters at the Marty stations. I think we need to think about things like that. And that's, again, a proactive approach to this versus a reactive. And again, I don't know how many commissioners have operated multi-million-dollar budgets before they got into office. And I just think that they are not equipped enough in their base of knowledge. Some of them are much more adept probably than I am. I've never been, the top of the class. If it hadn't been for Lisa Oxworth, I probably wouldn't have got out of high school. But I know how to run projects. I know how to be accountable for the money. I know how to be accountable for the timelines. And if anybody thinks that building a train station in downtown Stewart and taking the parking away from, or adding parking spaces needed. The other thing too is the next thing is you've got to stay within the envelope of what you're talking about. I just don't see how in anybody's game plan that's going to work, and especially if you're going to give them the money to do it. I'll tell you what, give me a piece of property that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars long term for $80 a year or whatever that low rate they were going to do, and don't let me have to be accountable for after it. Deal. I'll take it.
Oh,
But I won't build a
absolutely.
train station. I'd do something
They don't
else.
do that. They don't do that for our local private businesses.
They
Unfortunately,
don't
only the
back my
foreign owned
business.
one.
I can tell you that they've never back. I deal against NGOs all the time in my boat
Mhm.
safety company. My competition gets 800 to a million to a year to burn.
Jeez.
I make about $600,000 to $800,000 a year in that business, and every bit of it goes back into employees or contractors, local people's pockets. I myself have never, in 5 years, I think I've taken $30,000 worth of paychecks out of it to pay myself to work there. That's pretty cheap. You want to stay busy, work for free. Your
Yep,
phone rings
that's
off
right.
the hook.
That's
You
right.
know?
That is right. And I think that's what government should be doing is supporting our local businesses. Again, not a foreign owned entity.
Absolutely. And the local businesses down in downtown Stewart and all of Martin County. You think, well, it's a boon to downtown businesses. Like I said, everybody goes to downtown Stewart when they come here. It's a unique place, but it's snarling traffic. I mean, bumper to bumper already now. And that's happened in the last really 10 years. I'd say really even worse the last 5 years.
Agree.
Everybody wants to live here. and we all know why.
Yep, it is absolutely paradise. So let's move on here. Residents are requesting one evening meeting a month. One of the commissioners said that they would support either all morning or all evening. Another commissioner said, no, I don't want any evenings, and then they've said it's going to take too long. The agendas are too long, when in fact, the county administrator and the chair of the commission go over that agenda. So they could have a shorter agenda once a month, for an evening meeting. So what is your feeling? Would you support an evening meeting for
Yeah,
residents?
I would definitely, because, working people can't get down there during the day. And I'll even go one better. I think when you register to vote or you register to get a driver's license in Martin County, you should have the opportunity to opt into a email website that you can give your opinion on, much like change.org. So if you can't make a meeting, if I'm a commissioner, I want to know what you think. And if, 98% of the people are against it, and in those meetings, there's always the same 15 to 35, and I'm usually in that 15 to 35 against it. We're always the same people in there, and it's usually the same guys across the desk with the suits. One of about 4 or 5, developer, people that go in there, and not all development is bad, but I think that, people's voices get drowned out in a small setting. And so I would absolutely be for a night meeting, but I would also be for working to make a way where you could contact me and I could see who you are and verify who you are, because when you register on that site, technology can make that happen where you get one say so in there, you know what I mean, where you can't do multiple things.
Yeah,
So I think it's totally possible.
That's true, John. And that actually reminded me of something, and it comes back to Brightline again.
Of
The
course.
commission got impressed with a lot of same colored t-shirts in the room, but it was the same group of people.
Yeah.
Fort Pierce, St. Lucie County were looking at Brightline, and they put a poll out to their residents. And I'm like, why doesn't Martin County put a poll out? Then you're really going to know where everybody stands, because it is very divisive. And there are people very supportive and there are people not. But why not put a poll out? So your idea of being able to reach out to that working guy that can't make it to the meetings and somehow get them included, 100% support. It's about government involvement and transparency. And for these folks that are asking the commission to have a night meeting, it's a shame not to try and accommodate people that want to be involved, because so many people either can't be or they're too busy. So when you have folks that want to be, let's do it.
Well, I want to say one thing. I am not against Brightline. I would love to see a train stop here that, I just don't want the taxpayers to pay for it. You
100%.
know, I mean, I would ride the train, up and down if I had to do business and pay the Ubers. It's certainly not cheaper, and I've made that comparison to one of my good friends that lives out in Palm City area. I said, you leave your house, I'll leave my house. We'll meet in Versailles in Miami for breakfast. Loser pays. I'll take the mileage rate. You take your mileage rate, your parking, your Uber, everything else, and your train ticket. And guess what? Not only will I beat you down there, I'll carry 3 people in my car, but going to the Miami Boat Show, nothing better than riding what I call the party train going down to Miami
Right.
and back with a bunch of drunk people buying boats and yacht brokers.
That's
I
right.
don't drink, by the way. Don't smoke, don't drink. I'm pretty straight level and boring.
John, I'm right there with you. That's been my argument all along, is taxpayers shouldn't be footing the bill for a private foreign owned company. So pay for it yourself. Come on. I'd love it. I'd love it.
Yeah. I'll ride it.
I would too. What's something local government isn't telling residents that they should be?
I don't think local government is, I think that they are not transparent with the voters on a lot of things. So if you're asking me a specific one, I think just what we're talking about this meeting, that all of this has been suggested to them, but not once have I heard it. And I'll give you another example. The mooring field that went into to the Manatee Pocket. I've lived there. I never heard anything about it before it went in. Now, when I went in and they were already putting, what I'm going to call the outhouse there, which was, and they only had, I think, 2 parking spaces for that. And they didn't want to give keys to the commercial fishermen that are there. And, the marine industry brings in 222 million, I think, annually of revenue. And there's 2 million pounds of fish comes through that docks on a good year, right? So, and if you like to eat fish, which we all do, I don't think I want mine brought in from Chile or Vietnam or somewhere. I want to go right down there to Tasha's or Basin Seafood, or go down and, if if guys like you might be able to get some off the dock, But I mean, I just think that is another idea for me personally that was not transparent. How can I live in there, be in the boat business, and not know you're putting a mooring field in? And I'm not against the mooring field so much. I just don't think it was thought out, and I don't think it was given to the people that lived in Rocky Point or in Port Salerno or New Monrovia to say, hey, what do you think? And I understand the premise of why they did it because they don't want people anchoring out and doing all this stuff. But it would have been nice to think that through and make a deal with somebody to have adequate parking for it. As a result, you end up headbutting with landowners around there and they don't want anything to do with it. And I was down there yesterday, and this is a prime example. There was a couple down there that came up off of the dock area, drunk, having a knockdown, drag out argument. I mean, there was no physical confrontation, but I'm gonna tell you, you don't have to have any restrictions on you to live on a mooring ball. You can be a predator, you can be a criminal, you can be whatever. You can switch mooring ball to mooring ball. And there's been some incidences of guys on those boats out there, that you don't know. I mean, there's I'm gonna stop on that.
Yeah,
I'll get off on a soapbox on that. I
easy
know
to
I'm
do.
the training is. I better stay away from it.
So, perfect segue though. We're talking about the fishermen, Port Salerno, your home district. What message do you have for your District 4 constituents, particularly the Port Salerno marine and fishing industry that has been widely vocal?
I can tell you, if I get elected county commissioner, that you will be able to put your skates on and ice skate on Hades before I let them take away that heritage, that tradition, that livelihood, that all important thing we need for all of Martin County, all a part of Florida that was granted to them. Somebody told me, I was down on the docks yesterday doing interviews, talking to people, asking what they think. Somebody told me that had been willed to the fishermen. Then they formed a 501c3. I'm not sure about any of this. This was just told to me yesterday, but if I get to be county commissioner, you can rest assured I'm going to dig down into it. And my goal is, let's fix the docks up a little bit if you don't like how they look, but let's don't take away the fresh fish and the livelihood of people and the identity of Port Salerno for the sake of wanting to have a county marina. We got another new marina going in at the foot of the bridge. Safe Harbor just bought the other one. And of course, the Huizinga family did the one at the city. And then you've got one out at Indian River. And then you've got 2 or 3 of them in Manatee Pocket, smaller marinas. I just don't think we need a county marina. I think we need a fishing dock worse than that. I mean, that's what I think. I think that that's more important than, somebody's got a trawler sitting in there that's not even going to move or buy any fuel and brings no economic welfare, or a sailboat guy that's going to, no offense to sailboats, I'm a powerboat guy, but a lot of those guys in the mooring field, they'll come in and take your salt and pepper and your toilet paper out of the bathrooms and see you later, bye. Because,
They do.
sailing's
It
free,
happens a
everything else
lot.
is, right?
Right. I can tell you're a boater just from you saying that. 2 commissioners have been able to leverage their discretionary funding accounts to purchase property on behalf of the county. Should commissioners have more limits on discretionary spending, and would you support that?
I support it because I've been part of that. My opponent and I put 5.5 acres into the park at Maggie's Hammock Park rather than develop it and put 7 homes on there and walk away with, over $1 million in profit, because it was the right thing to do. Maggie Urchella had a great vision, and I didn't know it when I first moved here, right? I moved in there, I was a captain for guys that were real estate developers, and, they were telling me, this is Maggie. Well, it wasn't Maggie. If it wasn't for Maggie, we wouldn't have what we have now, and she should be celebrated, right? And when I have the Maggie Urchella annual Christmas cleanup in Twin Rivers and Maggie's Hammock Park. And the last time Maggie had little dealy boppers, right? Those little
Yes.
things that had like stars on them. And she came up on the last one when she passed away. But I think that, they should have the discretionary fund, but it should be transparent where it goes and what you're using it for, and using it for things like what my opponent did with me. I took a write down. I didn't have to do it, but my taxes were going up, and to be quite honest with you, it was the last hardwood hammock there, right?
Mm.
And so the fact she did have that discretionary fund and was able to do it, because when she found out what I told her what I bought it for, she was like, oh my gosh, we would have bought that because we tried to do it for double that. But here again, that goes down to show you the power of somebody that knows how to negotiate a deal, because I bought it for a lot less. And then I gave it to the county where it was kind of a pass through. I lost a little bit of money. I lost the taxes over the years, but it was the right thing to do. And if you are what you say you are, you don't do that. And that's where I put my money where my mouth is, just like I'm doing in this campaign. Do I want people to give me contributions? Sure. Do I want to fund it all out of my pocket? No, but if I have to, I will. Is it going to whack my retirement? Yeah. But you know what? Martin County's that important to me, and these voters are important to me that way. I just hope that they feel it's important enough to them to support it, because I won't take big money interest. You know what I mean? I'm not doing that. That's not my game.
Good to hear. If elected, what's one thing you'll make more transparent immediately?
People's voices and opinions, just what we were talking about. That to me is the number one thing to implement, where come to me, tell me, send it to me in an email. I'll set up whatever I need to set up with. I'll use my discretionary fund if I get one to set that up. But also, I think they should know that I'm very accessible. I answer my phone. I come to see you. I do whatever I need to do to get the job done.
What's the biggest frustration you're hearing now that you're out on the streets talking with folks?
The biggest frustration is over unchecked, rampant growth and traffic. Those are the two things I hear. And I interviewed 20 people on the street yesterday, and I asked every one of them the question, what do you see is, a problem? Not all of them. People moved up Miami said, traffic's nothing here. And I'm like, yeah, we all moved our way south to north. I moved in, this guy had moved here about 10 years ago. And I told him, well, when I was here, 27 years ago, when I moved up from Del Rey, I felt the same way. But they're all really concerned with overgrowth, rampant growth, I should say, unchecked growth. Nobody's concerned about reasonable growth, because we know that's coming and everything's changed. Somebody has an old store and somebody takes it and revamps it, makes it a nice new store, and maybe they have the ability, because it's within the put a second story on it, or redo the inside, or put a bathroom in. Nobody's against that. What they're against are just everybody asking for variations and changes to the comp plan and things like that. And water quality. That was one of the biggest ones people tell me, because when we were downtown, we saw all, this is something government has done that's great. They planted oyster beds all in down there. But unfortunately, because of all the discharges going on for decades, they all died. Water quality was another. That was probably the third biggest one. Nobody was talking about taxes. It was traffic, growth, and water quality.
Okay. What's one decision made by the commission that you think was flat out wrong, barring Brightline?
SB 180.
We talked about that.
Yeah. You just asked right off the top of my head.
Yep.
And to tell you the truth, I hate to judge the commissions for what they did, because I wasn't sitting in that seat and don't know why they made their decisions. So I don't like to second guess people. When they've had the mantle, he's a quarterback. He gave him the ball. He threw the pass and didn't run it. You know what? I'm not that guy like that. You give me the seat, let me make the decisions, then I can give you opinions that are based on fact, not conjecture.
If you could sit across from Commissioner Sarah Hurd right now, what would you ask her?
Sarah, we've been friends a long time. We can be civil to each other. I voted for you, but I just think it's time for a new horse to take over. And I think 24 years has been enough. And to tell you the truth, you made me in a way, because I sat in your office 2.5 years ago and said, oh, this is a great office. So this is what my office is going to look like. So it's not a surprise that I'm coming up, but I take the same values, but just a little bit more. I think I'm a little better at some things, but I'll still call you for your opinion if I get elected, because she does have experience. So I know that's not what I'm supposed to say. I'm supposed to demonize her, but you know what? I'm not going to demonize somebody I voted for a few times, but I just think, it's like a bottle of ketchup that's been on your shelf for 24 years. At some point, there's an expiration date on it. I don't want to twist that bottle cap off and try it again, because you can't keep voting in the same people in and expect a different outcome.
Well,
And
John,
I wouldn't say that last part probably to her, because that was just my part, but I would be very kind, and it doesn't cost anything to be nice and kind. You know what I mean?
Sure does not. Need more of it these days. Well, John, I've just got one more question for you. I want to wrap this interview up, because I'd love to have you back after you've been on the campaign trail a little bit longer, a little more, closer this summer, closer to the primary date. So many other questions we can talk about. We can dig into the budget deeper and talk about where maybe we can tighten our belt on the government side. But for today's purposes, thank you so much for coming on. You just filed within this last week. So
It's been a
it's
week ago today or yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever.
got to be like drinking, from a fire hose right now.
I never thought it'd be like this.
So, my last question on the flip side with Commissioner Hurd, what would you say to convince a longtime supporter of Commissioner Sarah Hurd to take a second look at you? What would you say to them?
She never got the job done. My job is not so much to say no, but to change the opinion of the other four people on that commission. Because, we're talking about a budget this last year was $763.2 million, right? And that's an increase from a budget of $672.7 million the previous year. So that's a lot of money to account for. And I tell you, anybody that's done business with me will tell you that I am absolutely a bulldog on that kind of stuff. So I think that if someone, has voted the same way, and if they vote the same way, then they should expect the same results of getting shut down. But I think that I could prove if you talk to me and meet me one-on-one, you'll understand where I come from, or talk to anybody that knows me. Talk to my 98-year-old World War II veteran friend, Fred. I've got some videos. I'm taking him on the campaign trail with me. He loves me. Somebody asked him, does he trust me? He goes, with my life.
We look forward to seeing him out on the campaign trail with you, John. One thing I can tell you is I talked to many different candidates over the years is you sure can tell the difference between a business owner who's now running for public office and somebody who's never ran a business. So just appreciate you stepping up and putting your hat in the ring. It's always a big commitment from you and your family. Thank your wife as well. I know it's always a big commitment on everybody. So I appreciate you coming on here today. We'll have you back after you've shook some more trees and shaken a lot more hands.
Win, lose, or draw, I'll be back.
All righty. Thanks for tuning in to the Casey Ingram Show. If you found value in today's conversation, make sure to follow us on Facebook at The Casey Ingram Show and subscribe on YouTube so you never miss an episode. I'm Casey Ingram. See you next time. Thank you, John Dial, running for Martin County Commission, District 4.